fast or the Sunday where we celebrate the coming of Jesus into Jerusalem. And basically he's facing his death. But before that, he was looking into the city of Jerusalem and he was going to come back, knowing fully well that danger awaits his return to Jerusalem, and yet he still came. Those of you who've been to Israel, you remember standing on the Mount of Olives and overlooking the city of Jerusalem. And I'm sure those of you, even though you haven't been to Jerusalem, you've seen pictures of where you stand and you look out and you see the temple and you see the temple, the mosque there, Al-Aqsa Mosque, and then you see the city of Jerusalem, you see the cemetery in the bottom. And so just that thought of overlooking Jerusalem and the Lord saying that I'm going to be going into Jerusalem. And that's where we're going to find our text today. And so I want you to go to Zechariah. This is in the Old Testament. And so it might be hard to find. So I'm going to give you time. Every time those of you who teach Bible study, who lead Sunday school or something, one suggestion I always have is always give people time to look for it. Because when I started learning the Bible, I got so pressured when the teacher would say, turn to this, and then the teacher's already talking. I'm like, oh my gosh, I haven't found it yet. So we always have to give ourselves time to look for it. Zechariah, found in the Old Testament, chapter 9. And I'm going to go, it's already here, of course. And I'm going to read verse 9. And this is what it says in Zechariah chapter 9, verse 9. Of course, if you have your iPads or iPhones, it's probably faster to get to this verse. Rejoice greatly, O daughter of Zion. Shout, daughter of Jerusalem. See, your king, or king, comes to you, righteous and having salvation, gentle and riding on a donkey, on a colt, the foal of a donkey. And that's the verse for today. The people of Israel are being told by the prophet Zechariah, hundreds of years before Jesus even came, that a king is coming, and he is righteous, and he's bringing salvation, but he's a gentle person who's riding on a donkey. On a donkey. What's the name of the donkey in Shrek? Is it Donkey? Oh, okay, that's his name. Sorry. Anyway, I keep thinking of that donkey. Luke then narrates the fulfillment of the Zechariah prophecy. So what we're going to do is, after reading the prophecy, or after reading this word that was given to Zechariah to the people of Israel, hundreds of years before even the coming of Jesus Christ, we are going to turn to Luke, because then Luke will narrate the fulfillment of that prophecy in Zechariah, this monumental appearance before the gates of Jerusalem. And it was the grandest of all welcomes. Think of those of you in our glory days as Laker fans. Remember those glory days when we would all go to Staples and we would call in sick so that we can go to the parade? I've done that many times. And so, it's wonderful. Everyone is there. Everyone is in purple and gold. And you're like, I don't know when that's going to happen again. Hopefully soon. But, we're this grand welcome and recognition of the Lakers. Well, it's the same thing. And it's probably grander during that time. The gates of Jerusalem was opened, and the grandest of all welcomes is recorded in Luke, by all four Gospels: Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. However, Mark accounts for the people spreading their cloaks and waving their branches. Everywhere people were shouting, Hosanna, Hosanna, blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. However sincere that welcome is, we're going to fast forward several days later. Some people were spreading their garments. Some people are doing all that. But, a few days later, you're going to see probably the same people spitting on this body that they saw. And the same people who were waving palm branches are probably the same people who are waving their fists a few days later in defiance and hatred of this man who's supposed to be coming in the name of the Lord. And some people, there's lots of people, when they opened the gates of Jerusalem and Jesus was coming in, many people were shouting, Hosanna, Hosanna. It's probably the same people who will be crying out, crucify him, crucify him a few days later. And I guess what I'm saying is, despite the likeness of the accounts in Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, I chose Luke for a reason. Because there seems to be a preparation for the coming of the Messiah. So before we go there, let's go to Luke chapter 19 this time. Luke chapter 19, verses 29 to 34. And I hope you still remember what Zechariah was talking about a few hundreds of years before. And now Luke is going to be writing to you the story of how Jesus came into Jerusalem. As he approached Bethpage and Bethany, at the hill called the Mount of Olives, that's the Mount of Olives where you look out into the city of Jerusalem. This is Jesus, sends out two of his disciples, saying to them, go to the village ahead of you, and as you enter it, you will find a colt tied there, which no one has ever ridden. Untie it, bring it here. If anyone asks you, why are you untying it? Tell him the Lord needs it. Those who were sent ahead went and found the donkey, just as he had told them. As they were untying the colt, its owners asked them, why are you untying the colt? They replied, the Lord needs it. I feel a special connection to the donkey in this story. Those of you who've been with me for many, many years, you would maybe remember that the very first sermon I did was ready for this? 22 years ago. I can't even say that. 22 years ago. My very first sermon at United Methodist Church on I Street. And I remember seeing my father standing in the back. And if I was nervous in the beginning, now I was quadruple nervous because my dad, the pastor, was standing there in the back. And I'm so glad that he stayed for the whole sermon. And apparently somebody told me that when I was done, he actually said very good. And I don't know, hopefully he said very good because it's done, but very good and so whatever. It's wonderful I just learned that last night, and I was so happy to know that. But yeah, no, it is the yes, my mother wants to make sure that you know that. That is the American congregation that was there. But this was the very first sermon, almost 22 years ago, and it was about the donkey. And there's something about this donkey. This animal was destined to perform a specific work for Jesus. He said in the story that Luke was saying, Jesus sends two of his disciples ahead of him and said, go into the village ahead of us, and as you enter it, you will find a donkey tied there, tied up. This animal cannot go anywhere. When this donkey was tied, it's because the owner doesn't want it to wander around. Why do you put a leash on your dogs? Especially Pork Chop. Pork Chop is the dog that will just, will go. If you don't say anything to him, he's just gonna go. I don't know where he's going, but he's gonna go. So always Pork Chop is on a leash. Because we need to make sure that the dog doesn't go anywhere. But that's exactly why you tie an animal, a horse, a donkey at this point, because you don't want this animal to wander around. It's tied so that probably it will be ready to go to whatever you want it to do. But think about being tied. I want you to think about being tied. Many times we find ourselves tied to a post. Whether we are preparing or waiting or resting, we find ourselves tied to something. Isn't it true that there are numerous objects that we tie into? And whenever the Lord, or whenever something has been put in our heart, we find ourselves tied to something. And we cannot do whatever is being asked for us to do. Why? Because we're tied to it. Because we're always tied to something. Sure, we enjoy the convenience of coming to church. There's nice seats here. It's a nice building. But that's as far as we can go. Pastor Jay, don't ask me to serve in some committee. Pastor Jay, don't ask me to head a ministry. Don't ask me to help with committees. I want to be just like this, tied to this church, and that's about it. Don't ask me to do anything because I'm tied up. We are constantly chained to our jobs. We're constantly chained to our money, to our investments, to our reputations, to our priorities. We're tied up to our dreams. We have plans, our businesses, our significant others, our earthly obsessions, my selfish aspirations. I can't do that right now because I'm tired. Now I want you to start thinking of a donkey. Probably not Shrek donkey, but just a donkey. And I want you to imagine the donkey being tied. The next thing that it says in the word is this. He said, go into the village ahead of you, and you will find a donkey or a colt tied there, which, tied, number one. Number two, which no one has ever ridden. Hindi pa nagagamit. Hindi pa nasasakyan. No one has ever used it. No one has ever gotten to the back of the donkey to use it as transportation. No one has ever ridden, the word says. I used to know someone who bought a nice, beautiful sports car way back. And he always would tell me the merits of the car, the speed of the car, the handling of the car, the design of the car, the engine of the car. I have no idea what it is. The interior of the car. In fact, according to him, his parents bought him the car. It was the most intelligent buy that his parents, actually he said that I have made. And I'm thinking, well, it's your parents' bought. That his parents have made. A car that performs like that is hard to beat, especially if it's given to you for free. The funny thing is, I seldom saw the car. I always wondered, why isn't he driving that car? So I asked him. He told me, I'm like, why are you not driving your car? You know, this wonderful car that you keep talking about. And he told me, I don't want to put mileage on it. And I'm afraid that it might get scratched. And a bird might poop on it. And worse, I might get into an accident. So I don't want to use it. And so I keep it locked, and it's very clean in my garage. So he keeps it locked and very clean in the garage. It's like the donkey not being taken out for a ride. It's tied, and no one knows how good it performs its donkey duties because it's tied up and no one is using it. And as I said a while ago, have you ever seen a donkey? Have you ridden one? Let me tell you a story. I went to visit Petra. Petra is a historical and archaeological city in the country of Jordan, the southern part of the country of Jordan in the Middle East. And it's famous for its rock-cut architecture. And there's a building on the top, by the way, called the monastery. And those of you who have seen, what is the movie? Indiana Jones. I don't know which one. I have never seen it. But one of those movies, it featured Petra, where it's called the Treasury, and so it's a building that's cut into the rock. And there's another building, by the way, not that one, but there's another building on the top, and it's called the monastery. And I remember before I went to Petra, my older sister, Tijona, was telling me, that's not, you need to go to the very top. But I don't think you can make it because it's a hard hike up there. And she knows that I don't hike. I don't even walk. So it's like, it's a hard thing. You're probably not going to make it there. It took us, it was so hard for me and Alan to go up there. So I don't think you're going to make it. And I said to myself, I don't think so either. And I got there, I said, no, I'm going to do it. So I started hiking, and they said it's a 45-minute climb. It took me 2 hours to go up there. And I practically died that day. I really did. In fact, no one knew I was there but my sister Jeff. And I didn't tell my family that I was there. And I was about to say, well, if I die today, it's okay. Jeff knows where I'm at. So they can send someone to go take a look under the rocks or somewhere because she's probably dead. And I practically, as I said, died climbing it. And because I'm not a hiker, I'm not a mountain climber. And along the way, they have these taxis. And you're going, a taxi? Well, they're donkeys, but they call it taxis. And so the guys would go around, taxi, and I'm like, it's a donkey, you know. They're like, if you want to ride the donkey. I'm not about to call a taxi because I don't want to kill the donkey. I mean, they're small, and they're going to bring me up the mountain. And do you guys know that there's really no, what is that called, path? It's like rocks, and you're like going through rocks. And it's in the middle of the day, and it was so hot, and they're saying, you know, the taxi will take you. I go, no, because that donkey is going to die. I just know it the first 10 minutes. If Jesus needed, what is my point here? If Jesus needed transportation, he could have gotten a horse. But why the donkey? Number one, it fulfills the prophecy that Zechariah said. See, your king comes to you righteous and having salvation, gentle and riding on a donkey. Number two, the reason why he used the donkey. The entrance to Jerusalem is teaching us that he has come to save us, not by war, not through the sword, not through worldly splendor, but our salvation comes in lowliness. Our salvation comes in humility. And our salvation comes in suffering. When you look at a donkey carrying someone, you see suffering on the donkey. You see death if I'm on the donkey. But that's exactly why he used the donkey. He has come to save us not by war, not by sword, not by worldly splendor, but our salvation comes in lowliness, in gentleness, in humility, and in suffering. That's the purpose for that donkey. He said, go to the village, untie it, you'll find a colt there, that is tied, and no one has ever ridden. I want you to untie it and bring it here. And then he says this, if people ask, say, the Lord has need of it. If people ask, say the Lord has need of it. I don't know about you, but sometimes when we read the word, we just go, yeah, if people ask. How true is that? The Lord knows how nosy we are. We always ask questions. If we see something, we wonder about our neighbors. We make stories about what we observe. We have questions, where are you going? Always asking, what are you doing? So what am I trying to point here? When we make a commitment to Jesus Christ, when we start going to church, when we start worshiping the Lord, when we start talking about the Lord, when we make that commitment to Jesus and we start going to church and we begin to serve God and we start to use our gifts and become busy doing God's work, people will what? Start asking questions. What are you doing? Why are you doing that? Yesterday, a teenager, I think he's a college student, went up for the question and answer and he said, in my family, whenever the subject of Jesus comes up, my family makes fun of me. And my mom. Apparently, it's him and his mom that are Christians. And it's like, they always just make fun of me. And they do that. What do you think I should do? That was his question to the panel yesterday. And the panel was like, they were encouraging him. And they were telling him, go for it. They told him a few things. I'm not going to tell you exactly what was told to him. But I'm looking at that person and it's like, isn't that the case all the time? You start serving the Lord, you start loving Him, and you start doing something for Him. You start coming to church, you start carrying a Bible, you start reading it, and people start asking questions. What are you doing? Why are you doing that? Why don't you go to the mall on Sunday? Why don't you go to the beach on Sunday? Why don't you, this is a good one, why don't you work on Sunday? So you can have more money. Why are you going to church? Why are you doing that? People will start asking questions. When I made it known to people that I've decided to become a pastor, people started asking questions. Why? In fact, the first question that was given to me was this. Doesn't the Bible teach women should be silent in church? Why are you going to become a pastor? When we decided to lease beautiful industrial buildings like this, big, too big sometimes, too expensive, people always start asking questions. Why pay all that money? Where are you going to get all that money to pay for the building? What are you doing? Why? How? Why? Keep in mind, Jesus did not ask for a stallion or a racehorse. He basically asked for an ass. And more importantly, Jesus knew that people were going to question His disciples, who will untie the once useless donkey, and Jesus provided the answer. The disciples did not need to make excuses or make up stories. The answer has already been provided. Tell them, Jesus said, the Lord needs it. Ashley Smith, many years ago, spent 7 frightening hours in Atlanta with a convicted rapist. And you guys, most of you probably don't know this story. But I remember at some Atlanta courthouse, this guy is a convicted rapist, started shooting. He took the gun of one of the correctional officers and gunned down 4 people at the courthouse. And this gunman went and hid in one of the apartments down the street. And it was Ashley Smith's apartment. And Ashley, she knew that whatever she has been given by God will be used to let this man know that there is a God who loves him so much and has a purpose for him. Like the donkey, she was untied. She was used because the Lord needed her at that point. You know, folks, we live in a narcissistic culture, which basically says it needs to be all about me. I need to do what I want to do. I want to have what I want to have. I want to be what I want to be. We've got to stop living like that. And we've got to allow the Lord to work His purpose in us and through us. And allow ourselves to be untied and to be used by Him and for Him. We are donkeys. That is the message this morning. Many of us are tied up and we feel stuck and we can stay like that forever. Many of us are either new in the Lord and we haven't been used. We're like brand new. New car smell. You guys remember when you bought your car? Those of you who bought new cars? New car smell and everything. Some of us are like that. Some of us have been new cars for a long time and we've been in the garage. Church is the garage. We love it here. We learn. We go to Bible study taught by Brian, taught by Ate Loida, taught by Chona. We play in the band. We jam with Tim every Sunday. Many of us earn a living and then live. And that's all we do. We earn a living and just live. And it's all about that. We figure out ways to earn more. We live more so that we can live more, so we can travel more, so we can retire faster. And we're all wondering, is this it? Is this the purpose that the Lord has for me? The Lord needs you. We're all donkeys. Not because He cannot do a thing without you, not because He cannot do a thing without me. He's a great God. He's a powerful God. He has no need for anything. But why did He say He needs the donkey? Look at it again. The premise He gives us is this. If anyone asks, the donkey fulfills a prophecy to teach us that Jesus, the one on that donkey, is Lord. The Messiah that the Old Testament has been speaking about. He is it. The donkey was used to teach us that the Lord comes in all humility, that He is the Lamb that will be slain and will rule in the end. The donkey was sent for, and if anyone asks, He said, the donkey was sent for, and if anyone asks, it is to teach us that there is an answer to our profound question. What is my purpose in life? If anyone asks, what did He say? What am I here for? If anyone asks, to do the work that God has taught me. To tell others what the Lord has done in my life. Let's switch that. To do the work that God has taught you. To tell others what the Lord has done in your life. Jesus already knew we're asking. Jesus already knows that there will be questions. And He has the answer. You are meant to be loved by the Lord, created for Him, and destined to be used. Not to be tied, not to be ridden by anyone, but to be used by Him. To be needed by Him. You have been prepared for a holy and great calling. A donkey? Yeah, a donkey. Today we need to take all our losses and all our wrongs and all our troubles and all our excuses and say, no, I just want to be tied. No, I just want to stay here. I don't want to answer any question that people have. We need to take our losses. We need to take all our wrongs. We need to take all our troubles and all our victories to Him. And He just wants us as we are. Tied up, not being ridden by anyone yet. And if someone asks, the Lord has need of it. Needs me? Yes. Tied up? No one is ever ridden. Sinful, unfit, addicted, ashamed, broken, tied up, never been used, questionable, purposeless. That's what the Lord wants from us. To come as we are. Believing that today Jesus will start sending for us. He will start calling us. He will start untying us. He will start justifying us. He will start preparing us. And if you ask, if you have to ask, and if any one of your family, if any one of your friends, if anyone around you chooses to ask, He already has an answer for it. And you have to say, for the Lord has need of it. Amen? Amen. Let's stand and we're going to pray.